Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, The Lost Ones, Chapter 17. Jason had gotten distracted so many times during their scavenger hunt for the hawk egg with Zeke that he could never have been able to retrace his steps to the labyrinth of Coruscant's lower levels. Tenel Ka, however, led the way with an unerring sense of direction, which didn't surprise Jason a bit. The buildings drew closer together, became more dilapidated, more ominous. The walls were dark and smeared with sickly colored blotches that looked like centuries-old bloodstains. Jason saw the ever-present cross and triangle gang symbol, chiseled on the Duracrete bricks or splashed on with bright permanent pigments. Aha! We found the territory claimed by the gang of the Lost Ones, Tenel Ka said, her senses sharpened like a hunter's blade. Jason swallowed. Let's hope we find Zeke soon. I'd hate to overstay our welcome if that gang is in a bad mood again. I suspect they're always in a bad mood, she observed. They may still be angry at us for escaping them before. Well, maybe they've got Zeke. We have to rescue him. That Norris guy seems like a bad customer. Something skittered along the wall behind them. An ugly spider roach dashing for cover in a clump of slimy moss. At any other time, Jason would have rushed to study the creature. But at that moment, he just wanted to be back home and safe in his rooms. Tenel Ka looked tall and brave as she marched down the enclosed corridor. Jason wished fleetingly that he had his own lightsaber, like the one he used at the Shadow Academy. He knew the Jedi weapons were dangerous and not for play, but right now, he didn't want to play with one. He wanted it for genuine protection. Jason swallowed nervously and moved closer to the warrior girl, keeping his eyes on the dangling red-gold braids. Maybe humor would turn his thoughts from the sinister gang. Hey, Tenel Ka, do you know the difference between an AT-AT and a stormtrooper on foot? Tenel Ka turned and gave him an odd look. Of course I do. He sighed. It's a joke. What's the difference between an AT-AT and a stormtrooper on foot? Am I supposed to say I don't know? This is correct? Yeah, exactly, Jason said. I don't know. One's an Imperial walker, and the other's a walking Imperial. Tenel Ka gave a savage nod. Yes, very humorous. Now let us continue our search. She narrowed her cold gray eyes as they approached the corner. Zeke is your friend. You know him best. Reach out with your Jedi powers again to see if you can sense him. These quarters have many twists and turns. Jason nodded. He didn't think his powers were strong enough to locate any person specifically. He wasn't sure if even Uncle Luke could do that, but all he needed was a trickle of thought, an impression, a hunch. He and Tenel Ka were wandering blindly so far anyway, and the slightest inkling could increase their odds over pure luck. As he concentrated and closed his eyes, Jason thought he felt a tingle. Something that conjured up an impression of the dark-haired boy in his mind. He pointed the way before he could have second thoughts. Uncle Luke had always taught them to follow their Jedi instincts. He hurried to keep up with Tenel Ka as they moved down one hall then another. The old skyscraper seemed completely empty, oppressive in its silence despite the inhabited levels far above. But Jason felt invisible eyes watching him from secret hiding places. He trusted his Jedi senses enough to guess that this was not just his imagination. We are getting closer, I think, Tenel Ka said. They heard voices up ahead, and Jason recognized the timbre of a clear, strong voice, a young man's voice, though he could hear none of the words. That sounds like Zeke, he whispered. We found him. Filled with elation, suddenly dismissing all his ominous thoughts, he rushed forward while Tenel Ka kept pace, advising caution. Careful, she said, just as Jason turned another corner and ran into an echoing room filled with battered furniture, half-collapsed ceiling beams, and glow panels wired to the walls as if someone had rigged them wherever it seemed most convenient to connect electrical power. Other doors leading from the large room were closed, some blocked by crates, others jammed on the hinges. In the middle of the room, Jason saw a young man, emerald eyes glittering in the uncertain light of the haphazard glow panels. It was Zeke. His hair, a shade lighter than black, was fastened at the nape of his neck, and a leather thong instead of hanging free down his shoulders. Jason had never seen Zeke's hair like that. His friend's clothes were also different. Clean, dark, padded, as if it were a uniform, and much more stylish than the suit he had worn at the diplomatic banquet for the ambassador from Karnak Alpha. Sitting on chairs or sprawled on ragged cushions sat a dozen tough, hard-bitten kids, all in the middle to late teens. Most were boys, but a few girls looked wild and rugged enough to take Jason apart piece by piece like an obsolete droid. The lost ones. "Hey, Zeke!" Jason cried. "Where have you been? We've all been worried." Startled from his speech, the dark-haired man drew himself up, frowning at Jason and Tenel Ka. His green eyes flashed with momentary surprise and delight, but he quickly masked the expression with a scowl. Zeke appeared to have aged a dozen years in the few days since his disappearance. "Jason, now isn't the time," he said in a rough voice. A brawny boy with close-set eyes and thick eyebrows stood up, glaring. "I don't recall inviting you two." Jason recognized the bully, Norris. Zeke gestured behind him to calm the burly gang leader. "Let me handle this." Anger showed clearly in Zeke's face as he shook his head at Jason. "Why couldn't you have left me alone for just a little longer?" Jason scratched his tousled hair, completely baffled. When he stepped forward in confusion, Zeke flinched. "Go away," he whispered. "You'll ruin everything." The other lost ones stood up from their places like a pack of neat battle dogs, zeroing in on a target. Jason swallowed. Behind him, Tenel Ka placed a protective hand on his shoulder, in case they would be required to fight. "Zeke, it's us," Jason pleaded. "We aren't going to ruin anything. We're your friends." Just then, one of the corroded doors at the far side of the chamber opened up. "They are not your friends, Lord Zeke," said the woman's voice, low and rich. "You know better than that now. They may claim to be your friends, but you've seen evidence of just how much they truly value you." Jason and Tenel Ka both whirled to see the ominous form of the black-cloaked Night Sister, with her static-charged ebony hair and blazing violet eyes. The upthrust spines on the shoulders of her cloak looked like spears. Two others, dressed in similar fashion, stood on either side of her, a young, dark-haired man and a petite powerhouse of a woman, both of whom looked rigid as the towering Night Sister herself. "Timothy Kai," Jason acknowledged. "Charming as usual, I see." "And Garwin and Phyllis," Tenel Ka said with astonishing and unexpected expression, a feral smile on her normally serious face. "How is your knee?" she asked Timothy Kai. Her grip on Jason's shoulder felt tight enough to crack a bone. The tall woman's face roiled with a thunderstorm of anger. Her wine-dark lips curled down, and she barely controlled her rage at being reminded of how Tenel Ka had humiliated her during the young Jedi Knight's escape from the Shadow Academy. "Jedi brats," she snarled. "You should learn when to leave well enough alone. And you should have figured out not to mess with us after the first time," Jason responded in a challenging tone. "Zeke, what are you doing down here with these clowns? What sort of nonsense have they been telling you?" Zeke seemed to waver for a moment, but his voice was strong. "They are offering us, all of us, an opportunity, a chance we've never had before." "Like what?" Jason said, genuinely mystified. "What could those losers possibly offer you?" "They're taking us back to the Shadow Academy to train us," the burly gang leader Norris said. But not everybody has Jedi potential, Jason said reasonably, trying to keep Zeke talking until he or Tenelka could figure out what to do. I do. You should have known that if you bothered to test me, Zeke said defiantly. And anybody who joins us but doesn't have the talent will be recruited into the Imperial military forces, given responsibilities and a chance for advancement in the Second Imperium. Oh, Zeke, Jason said, shaking his head. Those are all lies designed to lure you to drop in your guard. They are not lies, Timothy Kai interrupted, her melodious voice holding the potential for deadliness. We will keep our promises. You will all be given equal opportunities, without regard of your social status in the rebel world. The Second Imperium won't judge who you are, only what you do for us. Zeke, Jason cried, how can you trust them? These are the people who kidnapped me and Jaina. Yes, Timothy Kai continued, and we learned our lesson. High-born noble pups such as you are no more worthy of being Dark Imperial Jedi than any other student. Her violet eyes glared daggers at Tenelka. Zeke, Jason whispered quietly, this is your chance. Trust me on this. You're in great danger. You could escape. Now, get away. But his formerly happy-go-lucky friend gave him a look that was somewhere between pity and a plea for understanding. Jason thought he saw a glimpse of the deep sadness that touched the young man's heart. Zeke said, you don't understand, Jason. You can't, because you've always had too much. You've never wanted for anything. These people, he gestured towards the evil Night Sisters and her companions, they're offering me something I never had in my whole life. With them, I had a chance to be someone. Not much of a chance. They're the ones offering it, Jason muttered. Tenelka tensed, holding her hands at her utility belt, ready to draw a weapon. One by one, each of the gang members stood and glared at the two young Jedi. The burly Norries and the other lost ones seemed to have been hypnotized, and Jason wondered if Timothy Kai or if the others were using some of a force trick to make them susceptible to insidious suggestions. Tenelka whispered, Jason, we must leave while we can still bring help. Jason tensed, ready to turn and run. He clicked on the comlink, hoping to signal Anakin 3PO, but before he and Tenelka could sprint up to the door, Billis pulled out a blaster. We can't risk any more of your meddling, Garwin said. There's too much at stake. Jason and Tenelka managed to take a few running steps before a stun bolt slammed into them from behind. They plunged, head first, into helpless unconsciousness.